here we have another module of the paper spectrum. That is the module titled as the marginalized and their rights. So this is module 4 of the common paper A06 spectrum literature and contemporary issues. And all over the world people have accepted the notion that all the living beings are entitled to and are empowered for a dignified existence, and the human beings demand the realization of diverse values to ensure the individual and collective well-being. And however, everywhere these demands or rights are denied through exploitation, oppression, marginalization, persecution, etc. So we have been witnessing the issues of farmers. They are going on protest against the bill, which is still continuing without any resolution. Okay, the fourth module on human rights deals with various issues related with marginalized groups and their rights. So, in the fourth module of the four chapters in the fourth module, this chapter, which titled as UN Speech by Malala Yousafzai, who deals with issues related with women's education, and also it focuses on the idea of free and compulsory education for every child of the third world countries. So this is the chapter, the actual speech made by Malala Yousafzai, UN speech dated July 12th, 2013, and she is addressing the honorable guests, and she is a Pakistani activist for female education, and she is known for human rights advocacy, especially in the case of education for women and children in her native Swat Valley in Khyber, northwest Pakistan, where the local Taliban had banned girls from attending school. As a young girl, Malala defied the Taliban in Pakistan and demanded that girls be allowed to receive proper education. And for that, she was shot in the head by Taliban, a gunman, in 2012, and was critically injured. After receiving proper medical care, she gradually came back to her normal life and continued to speak out on the importance of education. In the year 2013, she gave a speech to the United Nations and published her first book, I Am Malala, the girl who stood up for education and was shot by Taliban. The same year, she was awarded the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought by the European Parliament. In 2014, she won the Nobel Peace Prize. And in congratulating Malala, Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said, "She is the pride of Pakistan. She has made her countrymen proud, and her achievement is unparalleled and unequaled. And girls and boys of the world should take lead from her struggles and commitment." In the year 2017, she was appointed as the UN Messenger of Peace and also received the honorary Canadian citizenship. And she stood for empowerment with the weapon of knowledge and shielding oneself with unity and togetherness. At present, she lives in England, pursuing bachelor's degree. She has completed it recently, Oxford in Politics and Economics. So she delivered this speech at the United Nations on her 16th birthday in 2013. It was just 9 months after being shot by Taliban. She did not give a speech for revenge. She finds that talking about the importance of education for all people at the time of shot. In this speech, Malala highlights her focus on education and women's rights, urging world leaders to change their policies, and she urges action against illiteracy, poverty, and terrorism. So the message of the speech is that no matter what the obstacles, whether they be economic, cultural, or social, everybody is entitled to a quality education as a human right. So here in the speech she has used many rhetorical devices for the delivering of the speech. There she uses a lot many metaphors in the speech, anaphoras, repetitions, police intent. So that is one child, one teacher, one book, one pen. That is a famous quote by Malala Yousafzai, and she is quoting from the triad Muhammad, Jesus Christ, and Lord Buddha. And so she the speech made on 12th July 2013, she spoke at the UN Assembly about the importance of providing free and compulsory education for all, and expressing her gratitude to she began the speech by addressing the dignitaries there. So in this speech at the United Nations delivered on her 16th birthday, Malala Yousafzai, a Pakistani girl who was shot in the head by the Taliban on 9th October 2012 for promoting education for girls in Pakistan. So, and she was called on world leaders to provide free compulsory education for every child. And she was the first and the youngest person who received the biggest European Human Rights Prize called Sakharov, and she was received Nobel Peace Prize in 2013, and she also received many other international awards such as Women of the Year 2013 by Glamour, etc. So in the speech at the United Nations delivered on her 16th birthday, Malala Yousafzai, a Pakistani girl who was shot on the head by the Taliban, and because for promoting education for girls in Pakistan, she was received the biggest European Human Rights Prize. So it is something the terrorist attack made her a strong person. Instead of weakness, fear, hopelessness, strength, power, courage was born from her. She did not give a speech for revenge. However, she finds that talking about the importance of receiving education for all people is more important. Educated people are stronger than uneducated people, and Malala pointed that peace and education are related to each other. Moreover, she presented that women and girls should be encouraged to receive education since they are the most individual who are suffering from inequality to be educated. And she says in the speech that let us pick up our books and our pens. So she told young leaders from 100 countries of the United Nations Youth Assembly in Europe, New York, and they are most powerful weapon. What one child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. Education is the only solution. And in her speech, she recalled how the attackers had also shot her friends. They thought that the bullets would silence us. She said, but they failed, and then out of that silence came thousands of voices. The terrorists thought that they would change our aims and stop our ambitions, but nothing changed in my life except this. So what all things that changed her life was her weakness, her fear for them, her hopelessness, which all the things died. Strength, power, courage was born instead. And so the other there we have the book I am the Malala. My ambitions are the same, my hopes are the same, my dreams are the same. Thousands of people have been killed by the terrorists and millions have been injured. She said, I'm just one of them. So here I stand, one girl among many. I speak not for myself but for those without voice. So this is how she uh, how she emphasized what she has thought of education and voicing for the voiceless people. And she also emphasized that she had no desire for revenge against the Taliban or any terrorist group. She included Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Gandhiji, Mother Teresa as among the leaders who have inspired her. She said she wanted education for every child, including the sons and daughters of the Taliban and the terrorists. She said in the speech that I do not even hate the Taliban who shot me. She said, even if there was a gun in my hand and he was in front of me, would not shoot him. And this is the tolerance of Malala Yousafzai. She wants to wage a global struggle against illiteracy, poverty, terrorism, etc. And she wants the children to pick up the books and pens since they are the most powerful weapon. One child, one teacher, again and again, which is quoting one child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Education is the only solution. Education first, and she attributes her in nonviolence philosophy and ability to forgive from lessons. She says these are all the qualities she has learned from her father and her mother. And she is the young survivor of Taliban shooting and educational rights activist Malala Yousafzai. So, in her speech to the United Nations, discuss how and why she is battling for her rights, including her experience with the Taliban. And Malala's purpose is to justify her beliefs and actions. Malala adopts a strong and determined tone in order to encourage her audience to fight for the rights. This is the first ever youth takeover the UN took place, organized by President of the UN General Assembly, UN Special Envoy for Global Education, Gordon Brown, and Our World at School, an initiative from the world. So, a World at School and partners brought together hundreds of young education advocates from around the world, including Malala Yousafzai, who made her first public speech since being attacked by Taliban in Pakistan. And Malala begins her speech by utilizing various subtle literacy strategies to begin to explain and emphasize the importance behind her ideas. Immediately in her speech, Malala directly refers to God when she says, "Thank you, God, for whom we are all are equal." And Malala alludes as the well-known religious figure not only to thank those who prayed for her recovery, and it is something more that she wanted to convey to people about uh, her concern for people. And there is this particular quote. Now there is this particular quote: "Dear brothers and sisters, do remember one thing. Malala Day is not my day. Today is the day for every woman, every boy, every girl who have raised their voice for the rights." So you just click this link to get the video of the original video of her speech made by Malala Yousafzai on 12th 2013. So Malala understood the situation where she was put into when she was shot and the head by the Taliban when she says, "I'm not against anyone." And that is how she began the essay. So the initial part of the essay, she is expressing her gratitude to the most beneficent God. She begins her speech by addressing the dignitaries: UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, President General Assembly Wook Jammik, UN Envoy for Global Education Mr. Gordon Brown, elders and all her sisters and brothers. How the salutation began. And the initial part of her speech reflects her deep sense of love and compassion for the people who prayed for her fast recovery, the children who encouraged her, elders who strengthened her through their prayers, nurses, doctors, hospital staff in Pakistan, and finally to the UAE government who has helped her to recover her strength. So, through her speech, she expressed her wholehearted support to Mr. Ban Ki moon, the UN Secretary General, and Mr. Gordon, the UN Special Envoy, for the commendable initiation in the field of global education. And she further mentions the relevance of Malala Day in her course of speech. And she says there are hundreds of human rights activists and social workers who are not only speaking for human rights but who are struggling to achieve their goals of education, peace, and equality. Thousands of people have been killed by the terrorists and millions have been injured. And she says she is just one of them. So she says, so here I stand, one girl among many. She says again, I speak not only for myself but for all girls and boys. I rise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their right to live in peace, their right to be treated with dignity, their right to equality of opportunity, the right to be educated. So she says she is giving the relevance of Malala Day in her course of speech. She says, dear friends, on the 9th of October, she says she is recalling the incident where she shot by the Taliban. So on the 9th of October 2012, the Taliban shot her on the left side of her forehead. They shot her friends too. They thought that the bullets would silence them, but they failed, according to her. And then out of that silence, a thousand voices came. The terrorists thought that they would change our aims and stop our ambitions, but nothing changed in her life except her weakness, her fear, her hopelessness, which all things died, and strength, power, and courage was born instead. And she says she is the same Malala. Her ambitions are the same, her hopes are the same, her dreams are the same. And she again states that she is not against anyone, neither she there to speak in terms of personal revenge against the Taliban or any other terrorist group. She is there to speak up for the rights of education of every child, and she wants education for the sons and the daughters of all the extremists, all the terrorists, especially the Taliban terrorists. And she again stressing that I do not even hate the Taliban who shot her. And even if there is a gun in her hand and they stand in front of her, she would not shoot them. This is the compassion that she has learned from Muhammad, the prophet of mercy, and Jesus Christ and Lord Buddha. She is referring here the triad. This is the legacy of change that she has inherited from Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So she says that is the philosophy of non-violence that she has learned from Gandhiji, Bachagan, and Mother Teresa. And this is the forgiveness that I have learned from her parents. And that is something that her soul telling her, be peaceful and love everyone. So she is giving a lot many philosophical ideas that she is calling again and again people as her sisters and brothers, and she want them to realize the importance of light, that is education, when they are beholding only darkness. And she says we realize the importance of our voice when we are silenced. And in the same way, when we were in Swat is the place, her native place in North Pakistan, she realized the importance of pens and books when she saw the guns instead. And why saying the pen is mightier than sword was true for her. So the extremists or the terrorists are afraid of books and pens. The power of education frightens the Taliban terrorists. They are afraid of women. The power of the voice of women frightens them, according to her. And that is why they killed 14 innocent medical students in the recent attack in Quetta. And that is why they killed many female teachers and polio workers in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Fata. That is why they are blasting schools every day, because they were and they are afraid of change, afraid of the equality that we will bring into our society. So she is recalling an incident in her school in which she says she is remembering there was a boy in her school who was asked by a journalist that why are the Taliban's against education, and what was his answer was very simple, like pointing to his book. He said a Talib does not know what is written inside this book. So that is a wonderful comment made by that boy. So the thing that God is a tiny little conservative being who would send girls to the hell just because of going to school. The terrorists are misusing the name of Islam and the Pashtun society for their own personal benefits only. Pakistan is a peace-loving democratic country, according to her. Pashtuns, that's a section of people, want education for the daughters and sons. And Islam is a religion of peace, humanity, and brotherhood, according to her. Islam says it is not only of each child's right to get education, rather it is the duty and responsibility. And she is calling out the Honorable Secretary General, peace is necessary for education. And many parts of the world, especially Pakistan and Afghanistan, terrorism which is ruling. So terrorism, wars and conflicts which is stopping children to go to their schools, and they are really tired of the war. Women and children are suffering in many parts of the world in many ways. In India, innocent and poor children are victims of child labor. Many schools have been destroyed in Nigeria. People in Afghanistan have been affected by the hurdles of terrorism for decades. Young girls have to do domestic child labor and are forced to get married at early age. So poverty, ignorance, injustice, racism, and deprivation of basic rights are the main problems faced by both men and women in the whole world, according to her. And she is again giving the voice. And she says, dear fellows, today she is focusing on women's rights and girls' education, because why she is focusing on women's education, girls' education, because they are the suffering, they are the people, they are suffering the most. There was a time when women social activists asked men to stand up for their rights, but this time we will do it by ourselves, she says. And she is not telling men to step away from speaking for women's rights, rather she is focusing on women to be independent, to fight for themselves. She is again calling their sisters and brothers, now it's time to speak up. And she is calling again. So today we call upon the world leaders to change the strategies, policies in favor of peace and prosperity. And she is again says, we call upon the world leaders that all the peace deals must protect women and children's rights. A deal that goes against the dignity of women and the right is unacceptable. We call upon all governments to ensure free compulsory education for every girl child of the world. We call upon governments to fight against terrorism and violence, to protect children from brutality and harm. We call upon developed nations to support the expansion of educational opportunities for girls in the developing world or the underdeveloped countries. We call upon communities to be tolerant and to reject prejudice based on caste, creed, sect, religion, or gender. And she also wants to ensure freedom and equality for women, and so that only they can flourish. And she says they can't succeed when half of us are held back. That is a very famous line. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back. We call upon our sisters around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize the full potential. So she want her brothers and sisters, she is calling them brothers and sisters, so that we want schools and education for every child's bright future. So she says that she will continue her journey to the final destination till she reaches the final destination of peace and education for everyone, and nobody can stop them. As she will speak for our rights, and we will bring change through our voice. We must believe in the power and strength of our words. Our words can change the world. So, because we are all together, united for the cause of education, so okay. And if we want to achieve our goal, then let us empower ourselves with the weapon of knowledge, and let us shield ourselves with unity and togetherness. And she says again, quoting, dear brothers and sisters, we must not forget that millions of people are suffering from what these three things: poverty, injustice, ignorance. So we must not forget that millions of children are out of school. We must not forget that our sisters and brothers are waiting for a bright, peaceful future. So let us wage a global struggle against illiteracy, poverty, and terrorism. And let us pick up our books and pens, the most powerful weapons. One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Education is the only solution. Education first. So this is how she says throughout the speech. Her focus on the cruelties the terrorist attack in Taliban, of which she herself is a victim, reaches its zenith when she mentions about the thousands of people who have been killed and injured by the terrorists. Malala says that she represents all the boys and girls and wishes to raise up a voice for those who have fought for their rights: right to live in peace, right to be treated with dignity, right to equality of opportunity, and right to be educated. And she is again and again pointing out the cruelties of Taliban. She continues her speech and says how Taliban shot her and her friends. By doing so, they thought that the bullets can make her silent. But history has proved that no gun can seize the quench for knowledge. When, when the terrorist tried to pacify her from the activism with a bullet shot, what actually nullified was her weakness, like fear and hopelessness. She reminds that nothing has changed. She is the same Malala with the same ambition, hopes, and dream. Malala remarks that she is not against anyone and does not want to take revenge against Taliban or any other terrorist group. She speaks for the right of education of every child and stresses that it is very important to provide education for children of all the terrorists, especially the Taliban. Her speech finds new lights when she says that she does not even hate the Taliban who tried to kill her, and never would she take revenge against them. And further, she focuses on importance of the following principles of nonviolence practiced by the stalwarts like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Gandhiji, Bacha Khan, Mother Teresa. So she says it is the qualities of forgiveness and love that she has learned from her parents and teachers helps her to forgive even those who try to perish her. So she says she continued her speech by emphasizing the power of books and education. When the Pakistani people saw the guns, they realized the importance of books and pens. She points out the famous quote, "Pen here is mightier than sword." Malala says the terrorists are afraid of the power of education and voice of women. Only because of that fear, they killed many medical students. Again, which is we have seen this. While pointing out the challenges faced by world, providing proper education to the young heart. She lists out a number of issues like child labor, terrorism, early marriage, poverty, ignorance, injustice, racism, and deprivation of basic rights as an obstacle in creating young, educated world. At the end of the speech, she requires all the world leaders to change their strategic policies to ensure the peace and prosperity of a nation. All the governments must ensure free and compulsory education for all children. It's the duty of government to fight against terrorism, violence, and protect children from all the abuses. And she highlights the significance of inviting the developed nations to support the expansion of educational opportunities for girls in the developing nations. She reminds we must stop all the prejudices based on caste, creed, religion, and gender. Being a woman, it is very important to realize the potential. So she is a campaigner for girls' education from Pakistan, and which we know. So, when she made her speech, she was only 11 years old. Her father took her to a local press club in Peshawar to protest the school closings, and she gave her first speech there. And she says, "How dare the Taliban take away my basic right to education?" Her speech was publicized through Pakistan, and she won the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize in 2014 at the age of 17. In fact, she is the youngest Nobel Prize laureate. This young activist and human rights advocate fights for the education of young girls around the world. And she concludes her speech by reminding us the importance of education and peace. For achieving a goal, we should unite here and be ready to use the most powerful weapon of knowledge. So we should not forget that our brothers and sisters are waiting for a bright future. So it is everybody's responsibility to fight against illiteracy, poverty, and terrorism. She inspires a lot many people, including us, to take the most powerful weapon, that is pen, books. She concludes her speech that education is the only solution for changing the world. So there is a Malala Day, the same day which is commemorated on July 12th each year to honor women and children rights around the world. July 12th is the birthday of Malala Yousafzai. She was shot in the head on October 9, 2012 by Taliban gunmen after she publicly advocated for the education of girls. So this is the chapter Yuan speech by Malala Yousafzai. Thank you.